No, it doesn't. What if I told you it's not D&D, but it's you? Let's talk about it. So there's about 9 common complaints with 5th edition, and what we're going to do is, instead of being negative Nancy's about this, and I've really begun reinvigorating myself into 5e. I really want to run 5e. The 2024 stuff is really good. So this isn't like a bitching video. This is going to be how you're not using the rules and how the rules will help you understand and obviate those 9 very common complaints. Because once you actually start using the rules, you'll understand that the DMG, especially the 2014 DMG, which you can still use even in 2024, has a lot of rules in it that are completely ignored, either willingly or just out of ignorance, by DMs and players. But of course, it's the DMs who control the world. So what are those primary complaints about Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition? Easy. Number one is D&D is too binary. It's a pass or fail system. Wrong. We'll get to that and how you deal with that using only the DMG and not relying only on the player's handbook or word of mouth. Number 2, exploration is boring, dead, non-existent. Also, nope, plenty of optional rules for how to get around that and how to deal with that. Number 3, combat takes too long. Yes, because you're doing combat incorrectly. And again, the DMG will provide the answers to help with that. Number 4, short rest, long rest. They just make a disaster of the entire game. Yep, they might. But again, if that's a complaint, fix it. Use the rule books. Number 5, the Ranger sucks, specifically the Beastmaster. This is a very specific one, and I get it. People like Rangers, like the idea of Rangers, like the idea of Ranger with a pet that does cool things. So yes, let's talk about how that has changed and how the DMG can help continue making this a better situation for you if you're playing the Beastmaster. Number 6, social interaction is vague and inconsistent. No, there's, again, well, we're gonna talk about that. Again, the DMG has plenty of just small tweaks that allow you to do the things that you want to do. Number 7, the game feels too simplistic and it's not tactical enough. You're not digging into the bag of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Number 8, encounter balance is confusing or broken. It is not. I know people will have thousands of videos about CR and how it's this and how it's that. It's because of a very easy misunderstanding of what CR is and how it's supposed to be used. And really, it comes down to what is the point of the adventuring day, which is a terrible term, but it's a term that gets used and it's fairly ubiquitous. And last but not least, 5e isn't deadly enough. What you really mean is it's not dangerous enough. And that is also incorrect. And so we're going to take a look at all 9 of these. We'll do them individually, and we will look at the complaints, and then we will look at the fixes and how to make your 5th edition game the game that you really want instead of the game that you think you've been handed because you only use the player's handbook to run the game. And with that, let's get on with D&D is simply a pass-fail system. Couldn't be more wrong. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Love to hear your feedback. Thanks. All right, now that we've gotten the YouTube platitudes out of the way, let's set maybe a couple of ground rules in the conversation moving forward, and I'll repeat if necessary. First off, there are no skill checks in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I know people will sit with their skills, but you don't make a skill check. You're making an ability check. You are rolling the die and using the modifier of the ability score assigned to that check. So you're making a strength check that may be modified by a skill you're proficient with. It is not a proficiency check. This is not a pedantic definition. This is a by the book. You do not make skill checks in 5th edition. 5th edition is not a skill-based game. It is an ability score-based game. And everything else are modifiers to those checks on your ability to do things. You only roll against strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. That's it. Everything else is just modifying those results. So as long as you understand that, the conversation becomes easier. So With the D&D is pass fail. It's just too much of a binary state. What people mean is that if you are making an ability check, the result of a 2 is no different than the result of missing it by 10 or succeeding by 10. That's what they really mean. So the DMG has given you at least 7 ways of overcoming this perception. And if you just dig into it, you'll understand that these are rules as written. These aren't homebrew. These are actual rules that are in the book that people just don't seem to use or touch upon. Okay, so the biggest thing is stop rolling dice for everything. That is a bad habit of a lot of dungeon masters to call for dice rolls over every little thing. And it stems from a little bit of table paralysis. It stems from you don't think you've prepared a room. And it's also from you're not treating the characters like the professionals they are. If I am playing an elf ranger in a fantasy world, that character knows, does, and thinks things that I never can even dream imaginable. Yes, they are my character, but if you're talking in an immersive state, they are in a world that I can never know. So you have to approach the game that way. You don't make them roll for every little thing. Think about what a profession would know in that world, and I'm talking a true professional level. The characters are heroes. They're not just farm people. They have classes for a reason. They have proficiencies for a reason. It doesn't mean you need a dice roll for every reason. All right, so to that, on page 239 of the DMG is the automatic success roll. And what this is that you're only going to use dice rolls for things that are truly matter and might be outside the abilities of the profession, meaning the character class or their ancestry or any number of things. Hell, even backgrounds come into this. And when you use automatic successes, if the DC that is set is 5 or more, away from their ability score, there's no roll needed. So, for instance, if you have a fighter with a 20 strength and a stuck door with a DC of 15, the fighter's not going to have to roll for that. They're just going to open it. Now, the reason that you want to do this is because you will avoid stupid situations on the table where the fighter just can't possibly get the stuck door open after rolling for an ability check on strength. And then your wizard walks up with a strength of 10 and magically rolls so much better and just happens to get the door open. Yes, there's ways to address that, but it doesn't matter. You shouldn't have to have those moments. You should focus your energy elsewhere. There are small, simple things. And that is the first easy way out of your binary state of pass-fail. Stop using dice for everything. Second up, you control the DC and you control the phrasing of the checks. And again, it's what we talked about. It's an ability check game. It is not a skill-based game. A lot of people think that 5th edition is a skill-based game. It is not. It's an ability check game with modified proficiency bonuses. Keep that in mind for everything that you do and everything you look at. You can use success at a cost. Also in the Dungeon Master's Guide. What that means is if you roll and your roll total is 1 or 2 points away from the indicated DC, let them succeed, but make it cost them something. So, for instance, if the rogue is attempting to pick the lock on a chest or a door, outstanding, and they roll, and you realize, they're 1 or 2 points away, awesome. Then you can say yes. You can ask the players if they want to succeed with the cost. It depends on where your comfort level is with this. You can say, how bad do you want this? And they say, yeah, I need this door open. Okay, awesome. Or you can just make the call as a dungeon master and say yes. As you're picking the lock, as the last tumbler clicks into place, that's when you hear of someone clearing their throat behind you, and you realize the guards have found you. Super easy. That is success at a cost. It can be in combat. You can say, yes, you strike the hobgoblin, but your blade remains buried in its chest. That requires other moves and extra things to happen. It requires people to start thinking outside the box, and it gets away from the hit, miss, hit, miss, hit, miss. Degrees of failure is another one that is in the DM's guide. And if you are going to use success at a cost, I advise using all of these rules to make your game amazing if you want to get well beyond D&D as presented in PHP. But degrees of failure is if you roll and you fail by 5 or more points away from the DC, then something bad happens. It's not just a failure. And this is where you need to tie these things to don't continually just roll dice. The dice rolls need to matter. And the players need to understand that there's always going to be chances, and they might win at a cost, or they could fail really badly. There's actually one more stage beyond this that we'll get to later. So use that, make it matter. But no, this isn't the DM's turn to be an ass about things. It's like, oh, you missed it by 5 points. Rocks tumble, everyone dies. It's not one of those moments. However, it is your chance to essentially put leverage on the party, stress them out, give them tension, have an encounter happen, lose a piece of equipment. There's all sorts of ways of doing this. Speaking of losing equipment, critical success and critical failure by the book outside of combat is absolutely a myth. It doesn't exist. You don't have a nat 20 critical success on a strength ability check to climb a wall. It's not happening. That is table lore myth, and it's nonsensical. The DM's guide addresses that. It calls it out very specifically. Conversely, it's the natural one is also not a thing. It doesn't exist. In combat, it is addressed because the critical roll, the critical hit, not a critical success, a critical strike, a critical hit gives you the extra damage from there on. But talking raw ability checks, there's no such thing as a critical success. Read the DMG. You'll enjoy it. It's going to be on the screen for you anyway. Bring those to the table, and you can and should do this where a nat 20 is going to give you a little something extra to the effort. And again, you want to use this for anything not combat and not saving throw related. The combat's already covered. Use this for downright ability checks. So a nat 20 is going to give you a little something extra, whereas a nat 1 is going to cost you dearly. This is equipment breaking, snapping swords, just things go sideways. And last but not least, and my personal favorite, and the thing that keeps the game from feeling so stagnant and predictable, because this is where a lot of this comes into play, is that players have carefully calculated all my potential outcomes. And because of the proficiencies are just +2, +3, +4, start using proficiency dice. I know people hate it. It makes it feel swingy. Don't care. If you have to roll that die and you don't know if you're going to roll the +1 or you're going to roll a +4, you are no longer the munchkin you think you are, and you're going to be able to let the table have a little bit of fate intercede into it. It's going to make it a lot more interesting, especially when you have these other 6 things and in play the table to make the game less pass-fail. When you do these things, the game is no longer pass-fail ability check game. It now becomes a game that now asks players, how bad do you need to do this, and how bad do you want to do this? We'll give some examples now. Traps. 99% of the time, traps and doors are done the same exact way. It is, oh, there's a trap. Oh, okay, roll perception. Okay, that's it, we're done. Sometimes maybe people may be asked to make a roll to, roll with their thieves whose proficiency and see if we can, disarm it. Okay, that's not how it works. By the book, that's not how it works. That is nonsensical things that you have watched or been brought to the table by people who have been doing it wrong for a long time. How the traps really work is you can use passive perception initially, right? So what we mean by passive perception is really passive wisdom, as we've discussed, modified by proficiency in perception. So the DM can roll this passive wisdom check and see if they notice the trap, and then go from there. If you're searching for a trap, that is a wisdom check. Again, modified by any proficiency with perception or anything else you can bring to bear on this thing. Pretty much anything that would affect that wisdom check to notice something out of the ordinary. Okay, so now let's say you find the trap. Great. Okay. Now, the next step by the book is how do you disarm it? Well, you need to roll intelligence modified by your proficiency in investigation. You don't just start disarming a trap. By the book, you need to understand how the trap works. And then you go from there. And you need to have, and when you make the attempt to disarm it, now that you have figured out how to disarm it, it is a dexterity check modified by whatever you need, and it requires thieves' tools. By the book, you cannot do it without thieves' tools. Do any of these things without the thieves' tools. You have to have those. That's why thieves' tools are precious. And when you start using them and to get rid of them by asking how much do you want to succeed with this, awesome. There you go. And you use. And then the proficiency to detect magical traps for Arcana traps. You have to use the proficiency in Arcana, which you may or may not have. So you do that intelligence check, and that's to detect magic traps. And then anyone can do that by the book. Now, at the elite level, I would, see the list we have of all the fixes. And I would dare say that a lot of times, depending on the trap, I don't have the role to notice a trap. I think traps are more fun when they are obvious and they are looming and menacing, and someone has to make the appropriate rolls against intelligence and then dexterity to figure out how the thing works and how do we get around it or disarm it. That's how I normally do traps. That's just a pro tip. And the second example are doors. Doors are in the same vein where it's normally you get to the door, open doors, don't open doors, doors get stuck, doors block our way, impede our way. Stop doing that. You can use all the rules above, specifically auto success on the doors. But a stuck door requires a strength check. And again, if you use the auto success, I would use that for the door. If the stuck door has a DC of 10 or 15, the fighter's strength or whoever's strength is higher than that. If it was 5 over that, just let them succeed automatically. It just is what it is. But role play the effort out. Make it fun. Locked doors, they require a dexterity check with these tools. Proficiency. You can't just have the tools. You have to have proficiency in the tools. Same with traps in order to affect this. And this is where you can bring in the degrees of failure, success at a cost, things like that. When they start doing this, is where I would do this. Secret doors they function very much like traps. They function very much like traps. And then concealed doors, when someone is looking around a room and they say they're looking for hidden doors or whatever, don't make them roll. It's a concealed door. It doesn't mean it looks like a wall. It means it's a trap door under a rug or behind a desk or behind a bookcase. It's easy to role play that out. The concealed door, or you can use passive wisdom, but the finding of the door shouldn't be the exciting part. It's yes, there's a door there, but how are you getting through it? And that's how it should work. And that is how the Dungeon Master's Guide fixes problem 1. 5e is just a pass fail, and it sucks. You're just playing the game wrong. Crack the books. And let's move on to number 2. Exploration is boring or non-existent. Right. Exploration and travel is boring. Again, to disagree. I think it's presented boringly at most tables. It's most definitely true for quite a few folks out there. Most of that stems from not actually getting out and hiking or being in the wilderness, but it makes it a little difficult to really describe what it's like outside. If your existence is very urban oriented and you don't really go into the woods or to the mountains or to the river or to a lake, it becomes very difficult to really explain what it's like out there. The visualization is easy. There's thousands of videos on it, but having been there, you don't understand the smell, the feel, how the air changes when you step from sunlight to shadows, things like that. So that would be the first thing to to make it fun. And both the DMG of 2014 and 2024. 2024 has much more information on travel, so I'm not sure how this topic becomes one of the major complaints, but it's out there. Besides, what you need to do is travel is not boring, and it comes in stages. There are usually a handful of stages to an adventure. You have a starting point, you have an end point. The end point is where you arrive at your destination, or you arrive near your destination, and you need to begin looking for your destination, which comes into what we're going to talk about. Group roles is where I would pull this into it. I would start out the beginning of the day. I would ask for wisdom checks for everyone with proficiency in survival, and make it a group check. If there's more players pass than fail, outstanding, they're going to stay on the path. If there's more failures than successes, awesome. You can use that to, at some point, spring something fun and surprise them. It's not just a combat encounter, but a deviation from the path that they weren't ready for, difficult terrain, a hazard. And that's where you can really get that in there to make that difference in their travel day. And then the second thing you can do is ask each player to name an ability check that they would want to do, and what proficiency, if any, they would want to make it with. And you can even include combat in this one. And what you're doing is you allow them to roll it, set your DC to whatever you think is appropriate for the terrain. There's a whole section on establishing DCs. So you take a look at that and say it's a DC 15. That's pretty much the mean difficulty check of 5th edition. And the pass or fail on that allows you to say, okay, cool, well, this player wanted to do a check on another check on wisdom with using survival. What are you doing with that? What are you doing with your survival proficiency? Well, I'm looking for food. Okay, cool, awesome. Then you work through it, and if it's success, you can tell them how here's what you've gained some sweet water. You found some berries that will help the party along. That will add, maybe a +1 to the next day's survival rolls. Or if it's a failure, you can say, okay, make that note and say, well, what you thought was going to be a good patch of berries, you actually led the party to a toxic plant. Anything in that realm will help out, and that's beginning to do that. And your travel doesn't have to be very long. If we're walking from the Shire to somewhere else and you got nothing else planned, you're going from the Shire to Angband, maybe you just do the montage travel approach mentioned in the 2014 book. But if you're just going from point A to point B, and you can string it out, and then also you can say that you can also, instead of the group checks like that, or massive group survival check and then an individual group check, the individual checks, you can take each one of those checks and not make those all happen in the same day. That's my bad. I use those as each one of those checks is 1 day of travel, and then you can repeat that cycle as necessary. And if the check is too low, then you can combine checks. So if you have only 3 days and you got 4 players, cool, maybe one of those players' check can slide into one of the other ones where it would make sense for you. And then narratively, that allows you to show. And for every failure, you can also add another day onto the journey. There's a lot you can do to this to make it more interesting, to get them where you're going. Another big thing is when you get to the end, unless it's a town or a village or something like that, but if you're looking for a shrine or ruins or a lair or whatever, begin the investigations, begin the searches. Make that matter. Make that matter a lot, especially if it's a creature with lair abilities. They're going to be aware of the party, and you can start really turning up the heat to let the party know this is where we mean business. You're not just going to go point A to point B, and just like most of the old modules start, hey, on your way there, you found the back door, the secret entrance to the temple of the slave lords. No, I get it. That's tournament play. It's not how you should run your everyday game. The other thing is weather and wilderness hazards. Both DMGs have text and mechanics on these, as well as the speed of navigation. Use these things. Make it matter. You don't have to do 1,000 rolls a day. You know when the party's eventually going to get to somewhere. So get those notes down ahead of time, and that way you can just flip it out and bring it over if you need it. Make the weather slightly consistent if you can, although There's freak hailstorms every once in a while out of the blue. It just depends. But try to be consistent with that. Hazards are the most important thing. And it's not just fire, but it's cold, heat, depending on the environment you're traveling in, fens, bogs, sudden rivers or waterways that you can't simply ford, that you have to figure a way around. Encounters that are in there. And that's another thing about encounters or traveling. If you are not actively being stealthy, and that means a dexterity check with that proficiency, and you're actively engaging that, you are going to be noticed by any creatures around you. And they're going to know about you first. If you've ever been hunting or you've been walking through the woods, the animals all know you're there before you know they're there. That's true for 99% of the time. So keep that in mind. And then tracking can become really integral to parts of the travel. And it's not, it's not that you're trying to stay on the path. This is if there's something odd, or there's a creature, or maybe the wizard needs spell components, or anything could happen. You can bring tracking to that, or you're following a foe after you've failed at a chase. Bring that in there as well. Make it matter. The important piece is keeping it all together and making it a group cohesive moment and a player-driven, player-facing enjoyment factor. And that's where most people go wrong with travel. Is most of us just want to get it over with. I'll admit fully I do not like travel in games. I don't really care about it. So I had to develop really these skills to where it would be fun and I can make it a challenge and do little quick encounters, and then let the dice rolls kind of help tell the story, and let me ask questions of players and then tell them, well, okay, well, here's what happened when you did it, and then move on. And then that's rules is written. There's a few other ways that you can deal with the aftermath of that too, of those failed rolls or the situation. But that's a different set of videos. Hopefully this helps make travel not be boring. It's not boring. We're just the boring ones. Also, go outside and do more than touch grass. Go find trees. Go walk around the woods. Don't get lost. Be safe. But yeah, and we'll move on to the next one. Boy, the big one. Combat takes too long. That's because you're doing it wrong. You are making it last too long. Let's talk about getting to the heart of the matter. People want fights. It's an adventuring game. It is what it is. You're going to have combat. You're going to have conflict. Over half the game is dedicated to how things work in combat. That's fine. It's not the presentation. It's not the CRs. It's just they get boring, and there's other people who talk about that. It's the presentation, but it's the players and it's the DM bringing in the options to do that. So, how do we do this? One of the first things you do to make combat not be boring and not last forever is use morale, for God's sake. Nothing is going to fight, will promise you, as someone who has spent time in multiple combat theaters, things do not want to fight to the death. That is not the natural state of order for things. So there is a wisdom check that can be accomplished if you are unsure. There's also in the 2024 guide. It's page 48. It goes down this list of morale and how this works. And when the creature first gets bloodied, or if they're this or they're that, they see a leader fall, or someone important goes down, or they see some spectacular flash of magic, that's when you begin to peel off the enemies. It's okay. If the party goes after them, let them go after them. They're doing what they want to do at the time. But the point is you're not just having these creatures just slug it out to the death. That is just crazy. Everything from animal intelligence up, they want to get in, they want to strike, they want to do the easiest thing possible and bug out. Use morale. I promise you it'll be worth it. It's super easy. You can even just make random determinations of how many creatures are peeling off with each morale roll you make. That's fine. Maybe the first couple of rounds, everyone's getting a taste of what's going on, but eventually start peeling them off. The big one from 2014 is page 272, the injury tables. Make it matter that you get in combat. That is probably part of the bigger thing, is don't run. And not everything has to be solved at the point of a sword or a spear or the edge of an axe or the head of a mace. But when it does, make the players not want to have to fight everything. And the injury tables, those lasting injuries, will help with that. They tie into some of the other things like rests. It's a big complaint. We're going to cover that in its own. But use those injury tables, make it matter, make the healing matter, make the time down matter, make all of that matter. And then you start to really control when and how everyone engages in a fight. Not everything becomes a fight. Things will start to become more negotiations than anything else. Even great enemies will at least sit down and want to have a conversation. There might be some betrayal, but they're going to talk things out before they want to come to blows, or not, whatever. But use those. There's a whole host of actual action options in the DMG, especially the 2014 DMG, that just aren't used, and you just bring those to bear. If you want a big cinematic fight, climbing onto larger creatures, they should be able to do this. They're using those. They're using that dexterity and those proficiencies with athletics. One of the special magic items they have, use that. Disarming opponents. That's another quick way to make combat come down. If you just do a flourish and that's it, and you've disarmed someone. Most people aren't going to bring fists to a sword fight. They might, maybe through a monk, but in general, you're not going to do it. Mark opponents. Use that. This is where we'll talk about that with the Beastmaster. I think a lot of people forget that using the two or more allies together and using mark. And using like a gang up and flanking. Those are the big ones. You start overwhelming people. I know, and I think a lot of it is like, well, we're facing it. We have flanking bonus of some kind, and they'll default to the take advantage. Well, no, there's actual rules for these things. It can really help what goes on. Mark becomes very interesting because it starts to essentially force creatures to pay attention to you as a combatant. And when they don't do that, it has consequences for them. And again, you can start ending fights faster that way. It just requires players to not want to just hit, miss, and move on with their lives. Overrun creatures, shove something aside, tumble through creatures. People forget about that. Taking cover, using other creatures for cover. What happens when you do hit cover? If the attack would have succeeded without the cover, then that means an attack hits the cover. And if you're using objects and you're cleaving through, we'll talk about cleaving through. If you're doing this, there's a lot of ways you can bring to bear. You start hacking apart the cover. You can start hacking apart these creatures. Cleaving through creatures. This is a big one. If you take a creature to 0 hit points, you can take that excess damage and carry it to someone nearby. Make it someone that's in close range, within a 5-foot square, whatever. That's the province of professionally trained fighters. That's where they really, really shine into it. If the original attack roll would affect 1, 2, 3 creatures, whatever, just spread that damage around. That's where you get the big cinematic sweeps. Use all of these things. We talked about flanking. That's massive damage. Make that matter. That's rarely comes into play, but with the lower levels, or even the higher levels, you get these things that can do these massive amounts of damage, and people just don't want to do the system shock because they don't want to kill the character. The characters are living out their destiny at the table. That is really how you bring combat. You take it from the 5-hour combat, you drag it down and compact it, and you can enjoy combat in D&D over and over and over, but it has to be meaningful. That's the lasting lessons of this, is make it meaningful. Just stop, attack, damage, attack, damage, attack, damage. That shit is boring and played out for 40 years. All right, next up, we're going to talk about rests and why they suck. They don't. Rests do not ruin the game. They have not made the characters weaker. They have not made players more feeble or timid or whatever. Again, it's with everything else. If this is your complaint of the game, you absolutely have rules in place from the Dungeon Master's Guide, both 2014 and 2024, to affect the changes that you want. The biggest one is going to be the gritty rest variant. That means that a short rest takes 8 hours and a long rest takes 7 days. If that's your biggest complaint, that everyone's taking a knee right after combat and regaining things, extend it out. Make the adventuring day matter, because the adventuring day we've mentioned once before already, and we're going to come right back to it when it talks about encounter building and why people do it wrong. The adventure day is the concept that is ubiquitous to 5th edition, just like bounded accuracy. The entire game economy and ecosystem flows around the ideas of bounded accuracy coupled to the adventuring day. So, gritty rest variant. That is a great way to prevent the rest from ruining the game if that's what you guys want. If that's your excuse, you have a solution. Slow down natural healing. It's just like anything else. So if you have a long rest and instead of getting your hit points back, now you have just roll your hit die, just like if you were to do with a short rest. You can just you dampen that all down, and now you are seeing just small increments of change, which again, that blends together. You're not going to suddenly just get rid of any wounds or stress or trauma or anything else going on in the body and the mind or the spirit, just by simply taking a knee for 15 minutes and going on with your adventuring time. You keep pushing that forward. There's a rule that you can use that requires the healer's kit to be used in order for someone to heal. They have someone in the party that has proficiency in the healer's kit. Remember, we talked about that. You have to have proficiency in a tool in order to use it. And so you have this thing and you can expend this use of it, and you can then allow someone to make that, make that roll. Not before. That will help out. All these are starting to constrict, and these are starting to not punishing the players or their characters. And now you're starting to make everyone, again, we talked about consider adventuring is dangerous. Combat is dangerous. And the lives of these adventurers are dangerous, and the immersion will start to come, and people start to really question, do we really need to do this? What else can we do? We should probably investigate more. What is in the area? There's a lot of things that can happen. You'll see spell choices start to change. Weapon choices start to change. Lingering injuries. We already talked about that from the last time, from combat. Make those injuries matter. When those death saves are happening and you're coming out of it, awesome. Congratulations. You're going to come out of it not 100%. It helps build that verisimilitude in the game. And last is using environments, using the hazards, using all those things, and start adding exhaustion to their characters. If they're not taking a short rest for 8 hours at the adventuring day, if they're not doing these things, start stacking exhaustion. And again, it's that -2, and it just starts to build, and it'll start to build. And that is how you can really help with these short rest, long rest. And also, just in general, there's a requirement that is optional. That is training to level up. That is probably one of the most overlooked things in D&D since the very beginning. No one likes it. Everyone wants to just magically get better in the middle of the dungeon or the middle of their little scenario, whatever the hell they're doing. Don't do that. Require training. Yes, it's going to suck for a little while, but it will make that downtime, which we're going to talk about, matter even more. It gives you something else to do for that sociability, that downtime that everyone also just complains and bitches about. Again, if these are your complaints about rests, you now have solutions. Feel free to use one or more of them. I would use all of these because I want the game to feel dangerous, which is another complaint everyone has, and we'll get to that eventually. I think that's our last one, actually, because it's the one I'm most passionate about, because I think people are full of shit. All right, next we're going to talk about the Ranger being lame, especially the Beastmaster. Whatever. Rangers don't suck. You simply play them incorrectly. Everyone thinks the Ranger is Driz Do'Urden. Now, admittedly, Driz Do'Urden has ruined the Ranger class since first edition and the Unearthed Arcana come out. That is yes, it's an opinion. I don't care. I will state it as fact. That is the worst thing to happen. Ranger didn't used to do dual wield. Doesn't matter. Let's move on. So the Beastmaster is like the biggest complaint that the Rangers usually get. It's because the pets are weak and all that jazz. And again, it's because you're playing a game Ranger Beastmaster by the Player's Handbook. Now, the 2024 Ranger Beastmaster is a whole different animal, and it definitely does more, and it does a little bit better. But you still need to actually engage the Dungeon Master's Guide and bring in these rules that are going to help keep the pet up and functioning and make that pet matter more than people think. Especially if you're starting out with like, oh, I've got a dog. Even if you got a dog or a wolf, it doesn't. Wolves are terrifying cats. If you have a dog, I have a Swiss Shepherd, and people are terrified of the Swiss Shepherd because the Swiss Shepherd is a German Shepherd, but they are all white and they look slightly terrifying. And so people want to avoid you. That is, again, the failing of how the game is focused and functions. And there's these rules in place to help facilitate this. So let's talk about that. Morale. The moment that you can have someone who's commanding an animal move onto the battlefield, that starts to create some uncertainty and fear. Creatures, hominids, are naturally just afraid of these four-legged predatory animals. It's just ingrained in us. We understand that they can tear us apart rapidly. Use that. If the ranger is doing well in commanding and setting that animal companion up, use that as the morale checks for the creatures that they're looking at. That's going to help keep that animal up and moving, and not being considered weak or sucky. Also, part of that is going to be the flanking bonus. You're looking at that. Marking. The ranger can mark this creature. The animal might be able to mark this creature. Depending on how you play this, that creates a whole lot of opportunity. Basically, you and the beast and the ranger shouldn't be worried about operating in these independent channels. They should be functioning as a team and just taking turns doing things, and really putting their targets into a pincher maneuver. Let's see. Gritty rest. That's all going to come into this. All the other things we talked about start to fold into this. And the biggest thing is that Rangers are not a single encounter per day character class. They thrive in a long, extended period. They are there for the outdoor environment. They're the exploration phase. They're really the ones, when you talk about making exploration fun, you get the Rangers involved with that. You get the Beast involved with that. And you can really start moving and pushing the game forward. And if you use these rules, you'll really start to have a better understanding of the ranger. If your complaint is the ranger sucks compared to the wizard or the fighter or the paladin or anything else, there's nothing can help you with that, except you're not probably using as many options as humanly possible to do the ranger, which we just discussed. So use those. Don't be afraid. DMs, use these rules. I'm telling you, it makes the game better. And especially if you got a player who really loves rangers and loves the idea of the animal companion, man, let it shine. And again, any character class that has an animal companion or summon creatures, there's so much you can do with it. And it's okay, DMs. You're not here to win the game. Let the players outsmart and outthink and outwit and terrify the enemies. They're professionals. That's what they're supposed to be doing. There's an absolute tremendous amount of capability and potential for social interactions, social role playing in the game. Most of the advice is sadly, just role play it out and make a roll at the end of it. And if you were really eloquent and the roll still sucks, oh well, so be it. The worst off is no roll. I need you to pretend to be a 20 charisma bard with high eloquence and the capability of awing crowds. And no, you're not going to roll for that, even though I know you're a complete shut-in and are not an actual level 15 bard with all of these great things. I still need you to pretend like you are. Yeah, noted. Lame. So let's talk about the actual social interactive natures of the game and how you can facilitate these. Just role play it out. Yeah, okay, cool. You can have a little bit of that, but the thing I always like to do and suggest, and it's using the rules again from the DMG. There's the rules for carousing, being a rumor monger, and then I suggested earlier that training should be part of this. You can actually do training montages if you really want to. Not like long-winded things, but again, just use those carousing rules and the rumor mongering, rules, and to also facilitate training, and you'll have a little bit better time. So I would say that the first thing you want to do is find what the characters want to do in the downtime. If your table wants to go grocery shopping, okay, I can't help you with that because that is boring AF to me, and I don't really care. Just tell me what you want, spend the money. Cool, note it, we'll move on with that. So that's why I like things like carousing and whatnot. And the carousing can just be not just whoremongering, but it can be just going out and doing things because it's how you start to learn things. So I would have each character just say, hey, what are you doing with your downtime while we're here? Okay, cool. You're going to go out and about and just see the town. Okay, awesome. What are you doing? Oh, you're going to sow some rumors and whispers here and there and kind of work the underground network. Okay, awesome. And you, wizard, you need to train in order to level up to get your spells. Okay, outstanding. So here's what we're going to do. Roll the appropriate ability checks. See how they do. And then, since you've used all those other rules that, one or a two, success at a cost, you know, devastating failures, critical fumbles, critical failures, whatever you want to call it, like we talked about, you can start to adjudicate this. And then you start to build that story. Then you have the interactive role play because you know the outcome of it. Because the dice have already said so, you're not doing the wrong thing and doing all the fun things and then roll dice and have it be the inverse and the antithetical to what you role play. And it helps you both understand, well, the ultimate outcome is going to be a success or a failure. So let's do this. And then, there's the, money costs, exchanging hands, things like that, whatever you need to do it. And for training, since, think about what your character class is, what your base proficiency or those proficiencies are for that class, and make that one of the roles. Intelligence with maybe an arcana proficiency if you're going to try learning new spells as a wizard. Go that route, and then you have that fun, role play it out, and let the players dictate kind of what happens. Put that in their court, and then respond accordingly. And this is really one of the shortest ones. Well, it's not; it's still 3 minutes long, but really, there's plenty of role playing that can be done at the table. Other than we sit in a goddamn cafe or a tea house or we go grocery shopping. There's a lot you can be done, especially on the carousing end of things. You just have to understand the environment that you're in and what the players are really after. That's the important piece. You need to figure out what they really want. And then if they're going to rumor mill it or they're going to carouse it or they need to go and train. And even during training, they can learn things. So it's okay. Plenty of role-playing opportunities. Stop making people be boring at the table and have fun. Okay. For this last piece, we're gonna combine the problems with challenge rating, how it's used, mostly by tables, how it's misunderstood, and then how D&D is quoted as being not deadly. Well, really what you mean is not dangerous, and it's because of a lot of factors. It's everything we've talked about up to this point, and then here. So for the CR, the big takeaway is that I think a lot of people think, well, this is a single fight difficulty, but it's not. And I know it's like, well, the monsters at a CR, whatever, I put that in there, and they soundly defeat the characters, or they're not challenging enough. Okay, well, you're having to look at the spread of the intention is the spread of the day, and that total XP value, and look at the level of the characters. This is in the DMG. Again, you can't run this game, especially combat. Combat is not a player's handbook facing part of the game. It is DMG facing. You have to be able to look at the DMG and bring everything we talked about to bear on this one. So when you start doing that, you understand the adventuring day and those number of encounters. It's the 6 to 8, depending on where you want the difficulty. On top of that, and that begins to express where the CR is truly meant to live and sing, and not like, well, I've got this, 4 players, or I got 4 characters and they're X level, and that tells me the CR's spread is this. And no, it's not quite how it works. What that really intends is like, okay, cool, here's really that comfort level, right, of really this solidified chunk of XP value based on those encounters you have to look at. And again, I would say that this bleeds into if they are getting their asses handed to them soundly by something, or they're too easy or too hard, you're not using the rules in the DMG to their fullest potential. And again, I encourage that if this is one of your complaints, and if you're having a hard time creating encounters with this, or having a hard time, really, it's just not creating encounters, it's just dealing with the encounter and dealing with the results. Some of it is the DMs feel like they're entitled to win. You're not. You make far more rolls during a game session than the party ever will. I know you've got the players rolling constantly, but every time that you're in combat, they're rolling the dice once per turn. You are rolling the dice normally multiple times per turn. So things like that. Use the gritty damage, the gritty rest variants, lasting injuries. You have to make all these things count. Your rest cycle, the ability checks, how they work, how all these things work, and you can start to tweak those rules. That's when your house rules come into play with things. It's morale, flanking, marking, outrunning someone, overthrowing something. Just using cover. All of these come into play. And the problem is 99% of the tables don't use any of these things, and they simply get the figures, they get them lined up, You put your dolls on the table, and as I swing and I hit, oh, ow, I do 6 points of damage. Okay, your turn, blah. And it just keeps going on and on. There's no dynamic movement. There's no fluidity to the table. There's no use of the terrain. And I get people, even in theater of mind, you know the terrain. If you're fighting in ruins, you know there's going to be rocks and there's going to be pieces of the buildings and pillars that are crumbled. You don't need someone's permission, and DMs need to stop doing that. Like, I didn't say there was a broken pillar you could hide behind. Stop. Stop. What do you care? It's the dynamic nature of combat. That's what makes it fun. That's where the environments engage. You don't need miniatures to do this. You don't need a virtual tabletop to do this. You just need to be able to sit and imagine together and not argue how you're going to win as a dungeon master. Let it go. This, man, like, all of this only works if you have the assumed play loop of bounded accuracy and the adventuring day, and you use these rules, and again, you start to turn those dials as a dungeon master. It's not to win, it's to make the game a better challenge and to make the game what you have all been complaining about. It's really what the entire crux of this video is. It's gone on for God knows long. We got some chapters. But yeah, I really believe it. I think 5th edition can be run. I have run 5th edition, and I have made it fun. I run 5th edition like I run Dungeon World, like I run Savage Worlds. There's no difference in how I run these games. It's only the mechanics that change, and I don't have to house rule anything. I don't have to cheat. I don't do any of that. Yeah, I hope you found this helpful. If you've tried some of this stuff, drop a comment below and let me know where it succeeded or it failed. I'd like to hear it. And as I put my 5th edition game up, if you're interested, I'm going to be running the 5e game using all of this stuff off of Start Playing. And I don't charge for this kind of stuff because I want to be able to play and I want to be able to just enjoy the games. I don't need to charge for these sessions. So yeah, again, thanks for everything. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, if you made it this far, you can put persimmon down in the down in the comments, and at least everyone will know how far you made it. And until next time, stop fudging dice.